Declutter your headspace. I'm sure a few of you have already watched one or more decluttering documentaries, but most of them focus specifically on decluttering material possessions. And if you have seen the Konmari method, she shared the method of holding one of your material possessions and ask yourself if it still sparks joy. And if it does, then you keep the stuff, and if not, then it is time to let it go. This made me think about applying the same approach when it comes to our own cluttered and most of the time occupied and overflowing headspace. What if we actually apply the method of going over our thoughts, memories, and life stories and reflect and ask which ones spark joy, peace, vitality, love, and which ones spark sadness, anger, bitterness, resentment, feeling stuck, depressed, and self-loathing. I will leave this beautiful question and spiritual pointer for you to reflect on during your meditation or self-reflection and contemplation time. Before we continue talking about the practice of decluttering our headspace, I would like to share a wisdom that my guru Eckhart Tolle shared in one of his videos. Quote, "The prerequisite for creativity is stillness," end quote. It was such an enlightening pointer for me because right then and there I understood how important it is for me to make room and create space for fresh ideas, creativity, and wisdom. It also made me become aware of the kind of thoughts I will allow to occupy space in my head. I would even imagine my mind to be just like my computer with several tabs open, and how I am closing tabs that I no longer need and are depleting my battery energy. And in doing so, I am able to conserve energy, which means more vitality, more creativity, more tolerance to handle our perceived life challenges, more love, empathy, compassion, patience, and understanding to give to ourselves, the people who we deal with, and life as a whole. It was important for me to share this in relation to the main subject of decluttering headspace because it is helpful to understand the cause and effect of having a full headspace storage and what happens when we declutter and the mind becomes spacious. Another prerequisite for decluttering our headspace that I believe is very important as well is awareness, which also stems from stillness. Inviting stillness helps us become conscious and become aware. And awareness is essentially who we are. But when our mind is cluttered and ego steps in, then our pure essence, which is awareness, gets clouded and we become our ego, our false sense of identity, which is formed by pure attachment and identification with the mind and our thoughts. And so you can see the whole domino effect of being identified with our thoughts, memories, and stories cluttering up our headspace. The awareness, your original state of being, pure and not ever affected nor tainted by any stories we create in our head, completely detached from the mind, is what is able to watch and observe and even transcend the mind from an impersonal and powerful place. Anytime there is a space created between you and the mind, the ego cannot take over you. Awareness is what dissolves the ego as well as the attachment and identification with the mind. I'd like to share this wisdom from Janine Roth, who wrote the book called Women, Food, and God. Quote, "Awareness and compulsion cannot be in the same place." That is how powerful and effective awareness is. And so, in order to be able to start the process of decluttering your headspace, you have to invite stillness so you will become calm, awake, and alert, and be able to let go of what you need to let go with more ease. If in case resistance comes, then as you know, I always advise not to fight the resistance. It just means something in you isn't ready yet. And you can simply accept that and continue to use it as a spiritual practice and help guide you to go deeper within by simply following the root of the resistance and as long as you keep an openness to discovering where the resistance comes from, then I know that one day when you are ready, you will come to discover the answers and the truth about who you truly are. Here are my own 5 practical tips for decluttering our headspace. Number 1. Develop the ability to simply observe and watch the stream of thoughts, and in this case, observing the inventory in your headspace. You will soon discover the few favorites and what seems to be on auto replay, and those that are quite heavy and produce suffering and discomfort, and those that aren't so serious, but they are mental chatters that still buzz and make you distracted. This practice may sound simple, but it can actually be hard, especially to those who are not ready to detach from their mental structure, thoughts, and memories, or if those memories are so etched deep in your subconscious that it needs time to undo the habitual thought process. The key thing in this practice is to learn how to create space where you can watch and observe your thoughts. Number 2. For each thought or perhaps story playing in your head, you simply recognize what type of emotions it produces, and if it is something that supports you in creating a more peaceful, calmer, and joyful experience of life. This is where you channel Konmari, and with each thought that you've been holding on to for years and years, now ask if it sparks joy or if it causes unease, sadness, anxiety, bitterness, and or depression. Whatever you decide to do with each thought, do it based on your own readiness. The most important milestone here is you making a conscious effort to intentionally study your own mental structure, and that is massive. Remember to be in alignment with the now, the journey itself, and be aware when your ego wants you to focus on the end result, which is achieving something or becoming someone, such as an enlightened person or survivor of your negative thoughts, or picturing a happier version of you. Become very careful not to get distracted with another form of ego, and simply focus on becoming more aware of the emotions that each thought produces. Number 3. Organizing your thoughts, or some call it mind sweeping. And what it is about is learning how to focus on thoughts that are aligned with the present moment, task, or situation. For example, if you happen to be writing a report to your boss and your mind starts thinking about what to make for dinner, or how you need to call the vet, or you need to reply to another coworker after this report is done, then you simply catch those thoughts that you don't need to be thinking at the moment, and you either write them down and so you can take care of them after doing your current task, or you simply tell yourself, okay, but I don't need to think of these things at this moment, and all I need to focus on is writing this report. And you simply bring your attention back to the now. You can apply this when you are also simply washing your hands or washing the dishes. Decide to put all your attention to the task you are doing, and if several thought bubbles arise, then gently burst them and bring your attention back to the now. Number 4. Guard the doorway to your mind, and what that means is becoming intentional with the kind of information and content that you allow to enter your subconscious. I find that watching violent movies and reality TV shows, which the premise is to brag about material possessions, or making the characters fight by encouraging gossiping or fighting, as well as listening to music with vulgar or raunchy lyrics, or news that design create more fear and paranoia, doesn't really support me in having a more peaceful and fulfilling experience of life, and it blocks my ability to develop real wisdom, knowledge, and spiritual intelligence. It also has a way of keeping you in a dreamlike or hypnotized state, and so it blocks you from being alive and connected with the now. You probably hear people refer to TV shows that are dumbing, and I find that to be true. I find that these kind of shows, music, and media can make us unconscious, which in spiritual terms simply means you aren't awake, alert, and enlightened, because your mind is taken over by the drama and content of these shows. And in most cases, without us realizing, we start to become the characters in the shows we watch. And especially when you are unconsciously watching these shows, you are easily influenced and you start emulating the influencers, and not to mention how it simply clutters our headspace. I would like to share this excerpt from Thich Nhat Hanh's book called The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching. Quote, "We are exposed to invasion of all kinds, images, smells, touch, ideas, and many of these feed the craving, violence, fear, and despair in us. The Buddha advised us to post a sentinel, namely mindfulness, at each of our sense doors to protect ourselves. Use your Buddha eyes to look at each nutrient you are about to ingest. If you see that it is toxic, refuse to look at it, listen to it, taste it, or touch it. Ingest only what you are certain is safe." End quote. The practice is not meant to be rigid or strict. It is actually an act of self-love and supporting your overall mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Just like how we want nutritious and wholesome food for our physical body, we must also ingest wholesome food for our mental, emotional, and physical health. There are movies and shows that can seem dark or violent, but if we watch with alertness and awareness, it can actually serve as a tool for our own awakening. And an example of such movie to me is Schindler's List. Number 5. Become okay and comfortable with silence and just simply being. We are so conditioned to be always doing and thinking about something that the moment there is a gap or space and we realize that we are just sitting, and then we feel guilty or we think we need to do something about it out of habit. Realize that it is okay and actually beneficial to invite stillness and have lots of moments when the mind is simply quiet. Remember what Eckhart Tolle said, quote, "The prerequisite for creativity is stillness," end quote. This wisdom from Lao Tzu says it all. Quote, "To attain knowledge, add things every day. To attain wisdom, remove things every day," end quote. Understand that we all have been exposed and conditioned to thinking about multiple things at a time, and it is simply how our mental structure works. But the wonderful news is that we can declutter or redesign our mental structure, and it may require a lot of practice, but it is something we can definitely do. Hence the essence of this teaching. Realize also that we have been exposed to a societal culture and constantly encouraged to glorify being busy and accumulate as much mental knowledge. For me personally, my experience is that we are not encouraged to quiet the mind and become still. And perhaps this is why we see so many of us suffer from mild to extreme anxiety, identity crisis, a deep sense of lack, and depression. I hope that this video was helpful to you. It's been incredibly satisfying and enjoyable for me to write this vlog and share this with all of you. Thank you for being with me today, and peace be with you.